The stars looked cold and empty to Commander Zara Velthak as she stood on the bridge of the Wandering Star. Through the large window, she could see dozens of other ships floating in the darkness. Some were huge cargo vessels packed with families. Others were small fighters with barely enough fuel to keep flying. All of them were running out of hope. Zara touched the metal railing with her four-fingered hand. The surface was warm, but she knew that would not last much longer. Their power systems were failing. Soon the heat would be gone, then the air, then everything else. "Commander," called Lieutenant Commander Jorik Talson from his station. "The fuel reports are in." Zara did not turn around. She knew what he would tell her. "How long do we have?" 2 weeks, maybe 3 if we shut down more systems. 3 weeks to find a miracle. 3 weeks to save 3 million Kethmori who had nowhere left to go." Zara closed her eyes and tried not to think about the children in the medical bay. They were getting sick from breathing recycled air for too long. Some of them had never seen a real planet. They were born in space, lived in space, and now they might die in space. "Commander," Jorik said again. His voice was different now. Excited. The scout ships found something. Zara turned to face him. Jorik was younger than her, with the bright silver skin that marked him as coming from the ice worlds. His large eyes were wide with surprise. "What did they find?" "A system, 7 planets. One of them has water and air." Zara felt something stir in her chest. Hope was dangerous for people like them. Hope had kept them searching for 3 years. Hope had led them into trap after trap as world after world turned them away. "Any signs of civilization?" "Yes, Commander. But they are very young. Radio signals show they have not even left their planet yet." Zara nodded slowly. The Galactic Federation had rules about contact with young civilizations, but the Federation had thrown the Kethmori out 3 years ago. Their rules did not matter anymore. "Show me the planet." The main screen lit up with an image that made Zara's heart beat faster. Blue oceans covered most of the surface. White clouds swirled above green and brown land masses. It looked like the old pictures of Kethmor, their lost homeworld, before the wars burned it to ash. "It is beautiful," whispered Dr. Kira Mordan from her place at the communication station. Kira was their expert on alien languages. She had studied hundreds of different species. "Commander, you should hear their transmissions." "Put them through." The bridge filled with strange sounds. Voices speaking in dozens of different ways. Music that was both alien and somehow familiar. Laughter, children playing, the sounds of a world that was alive and growing. "How many different languages?" Zara asked. "I have counted over 200 so far," Kira said, her voice full of wonder. "Commander, this is amazing. Most worlds have 1 or 2 dominant languages. This planet has hundreds. They are incredibly diverse." Zara studied the planet on the screen. It was smaller than Kethmor had been, but it looked healthy. The readings showed good air, clean water, and plenty of land. More importantly, it was far from Federation space. The politicians and generals who had destroyed her people's lives could not reach them here. "What about defenses?" asked Captain Ren Dolkar, the fleet's military commander. "If we approach them, can they hurt us?" Jorik checked his readings. "They have nuclear weapons, but not many. Their space technology is very basic. I think the strongest thing they have ever put into orbit is about the size of our smallest shuttle. So they cannot stop us from landing," Ren said. "No," Zara replied firmly. "We will not take their world by force. We are not the Sectar hegemony." The Sectar were the reason the Kethmori were here, floating in empty space with nowhere to go. The Sectar had attacked neutral worlds, planning to enslave entire civilizations. The Kethmori had fought to stop them. They had won the battles, but lost the war when the Galactic Federation decided that anyone who fought, even to protect others, was too dangerous to exist. "Then what do we do?" Ren asked. Zara looked at the planet again. Somewhere down there, billions of beings were living their lives. They had families and dreams and problems they thought were important. Soon, they would look up at their sky and see strange ships. They would be afraid. We ask for help, Zara said. The bridge went quiet. In all their years of wandering, they had never simply asked. They had always tried to negotiate with governments, to trade technology for land, to prove they were useful. It had never worked. Commander, Jorik said carefully, what if they say no? Zara touched the communication controls. In the distance, she could see one of their hospital ships. The lights were dim to save power. Inside, mothers were holding sick children and trying to sing them to sleep. Then we die, she said simply. But we die with honor. We die as people, who asked for help instead of taking what we wanted. Dr. Kira worked at her station, studying the radio signals from the planet. Commander, I think I can translate some of their major languages. It will take time, but I can create a message. They will understand. What will you tell them? Kira was quiet for a moment. The truth. That we are refugees. That we have children who are dying. That we need a place to live. And if that is not enough, then we hope they are better than the species we have met before. Zara nodded. She walked to the center of the bridge and looked at each of her officers. These were good people who had followed her across the galaxy. They deserved better than slow death in the cold of space. Send the message, she ordered. Tell them who we are, tell them what we need, and tell them we come in peace. As Dr. Kira began working on the translation, Zara returned to the window. The planet hung in the darkness like a blue jewel. It was beautiful, but beauty did not mean kindness. Many beautiful worlds had turned them away, but this world was different. She could feel it, the diversity of voices, the chaos of different languages, the energy that came through their transmissions. These were not the signs of a cold, organized civilization. These were the signs of a world full of different peoples who somehow lived together. Maybe Zara thought that meant they had room for a few more. Message ready, Commander, Dr. Kira announced. Send it on all frequencies. Make sure everyone on that planet can hear it. The transmission went out, carrying the hopes and fears of 3 million refugees across the empty space between the Kethmori fleet and the blue world below. Now all they could do was wait. Zara pressed her hand against the window and whispered an old prayer from her homeworld. She prayed to ancestors who were ash and dust, asking them to guide the hearts of strangers who had never heard of the Kethmori. In the silence of space, surrounded by dying ships and desperate people, Commander Zara Velthak waited to learn if the galaxy had any mercy left in it. President Lisa Carter was having her morning coffee when the call came. It was 4 a.m. in Washington, but the voice on the secure phone was wide awake with panic. Madam President, you need to see this right now. 10 minutes later, Lisa stood in the White House Situation Room looking at screens filled with impossible images. Huge silver ships hung in space above Earth like sleeping giants. Some were as big as cities. Others looked like they were built for war. How many? She asked. We count 47 large vessels and maybe 300 smaller ones, said General Rick Barnes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs. His face was grim. They appeared 6 hours ago. No warning, no advance scouts. They just showed up. Are they attacking? No, ma'am. They are just sitting there, waiting. Lisa studied the images. The ships were beautiful in a strange way. They had smooth curves and patterns that looked almost like art. They did not look like the war machines she had imagined aliens would build. Any communication? That is the weird part, said Director Helen Walsh from the CIA. They have been broadcasting on every frequency we have. Radio, television, internet. The message is the same in dozens of languages. What do they say? Helen pressed a button. The room filled with a voice that was clearly not human but somehow gentle. It spoke slowly and carefully in perfect English. People of Earth, we are the Kethmori. We come to your world not as conquerors but as refugees seeking shelter. We ask for your mercy and your help. We have children who are dying. We have nowhere else to go. Please do not fear us. We wish only to live in peace. The message repeated, in Spanish, then Chinese, then Arabic, then languages Lisa had never heard before. Each time the voice carried the same desperate hope. My God, Lisa whispered. They are asking for asylum. 300 miles above Earth, Captain Jake Morrison floated in the International Space Station, staring out the window at something that should not exist. The alien ships were so close he could see details on their hulls, strange writing, viewing ports, docking bays. "Houston, are you seeing this?" He radioed to ground control. "We see it, Jake. Stay calm. We are working on a response." A response? To what? They are not doing anything hostile. Actually, one of them is trying to dock with us. Jake watched as a small silver craft approached the station. It moved slowly and carefully like its pilot was being very polite. Warning lights flashed as the alien ship connected to their docking port. "Houston, they are requesting permission to board." "Negative, Jake. Do not open that hatch." Jake looked at the sealed door that separated him from the unknown. On the other side was either humanity's greatest threat or greatest opportunity. Through the small window in the hatch, he could see movement. "Houston, there is someone looking at me." The face that appeared in the window was not human, but it was not monster either. The alien had silver skin and large dark eyes. When it saw Jake looking back, it placed one hand against the glass. Jake noticed the hand had 4 fingers, instead of 5. The alien's mouth moved and Jake heard words in his headset. The creature had somehow connected to their radio system. "Hello?" the alien said in careful English. "My name is Thane Kolesh. I am a diplomat. May I come aboard your station?" Jake looked at the face in the window. He saw no anger there. No threat. Only hope and terrible tiredness. "Houston, I am opening the hatch." "Jake, that is an order. Do not open that hatch." "Sorry, Houston. Sometimes you have to do what is right instead of what is safe." Jake opened the inner door and came face to face with humanity's first alien visitor. Thane Kolesh was tall and thin, wearing robes that looked like they were made from starlight. He moved carefully in the low gravity, clearly trying not to frighten Jake. "Thank you," Thane said. "Thank you for trusting us." "Are you really refugees?" Thane's large eyes grew sad. "Yes. We have been in space for 3 years looking for a home. Your world is our last hope." "How many of you are there?" 3 million. Most are families with children. "We are not warriors, Captain Morrison. We are teachers and farmers and doctors. We just want to live." Jake felt something change inside his chest. This was not an invasion. This was a family asking for help. Meanwhile, in laboratories around the world, scientists were going crazy with excitement. Dr. Amanda Price at MIT had not slept in 18 hours. She was studying every piece of data they could gather about the alien ships. "Look at this," she told her research team. "Their hull materials are at least 50 years ahead of anything we can make. But the basic design principles are similar to ours. They think like we do." Her colleague, Dr. Kevin Ross, was examining alien radio transmissions. "Amanda, you have to hear this. They are not just talking to our governments. They are broadcasting children's songs." "What?" Kevin played a recording. Through the static came the sound of young voices singing together. The words were in an alien language, but the melody was simple and sweet. It sounded like a lullaby. "They are trying to show us they are families," Amanda realized. "They are trying to prove they are not dangerous." Across the world, people gathered around televisions and computers to watch the impossible. The alien ships hung in space like a promise of change. Some people were terrified, others were excited. Most were simply amazed. In Beijing, Premier Chen Wei called an emergency meeting of the Politburo. In London, Prime Minister Kevin Hughes canceled all his appointments. In Moscow, President Viktor Petrov ordered his military to high alert, but told them not to fire unless fired upon. Everyone was waiting for someone else to make the first move. Back on the space station, Jake Morrison found himself in the strangest conversation of his life. Thane had produced a small device that translated between their languages. They sat together in the observation deck, looking down at Earth. "Your world is beautiful," Thane said. "So much water, so much life." "Where do you come from?" "A place that no longer exists. Our homeworld was destroyed in a war. We tried to stop others from being hurt. The galaxy punished us for caring too much." Jake studied the alien's face. "You fought to protect people?" "Yes." There is a species called the Sectar. They enslave entire worlds. When they attacked neutral planets, we fought back. We won, but the Galactic Federation said we were too violent. They took our worlds and threw us out. That does not sound fair. Thane laughed, but it was a sad sound. Fairness is not common in the galaxy, Captain. Most species care only for themselves. We hoped Earth might be different. Why? Your radio signals, your entertainment, your music. We have been listening for months. You have so many different cultures, but you live on one world together. You fight sometimes, but you also help each other. During disasters, you send aid even to your enemies. This tells us you might understand what it means to show mercy. Jake looked down at Earth, trying to see it the way this alien did. It was true that humans fought a lot, but they also did incredible things for strangers. When earthquakes hit, the world sent help. When children were in danger, people risked their lives to save them. How long can you wait for an answer? Jake asked. Thane's expression grew darker. Our ships are failing, our children are sick. Maybe 2 weeks before we start losing people. And if we say no, then we die in space. But we will not take your world by force. We would rather die with honor than live with shame. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. These people were trusting humanity with their lives. They could probably conquer Earth easily, but instead they were asking politely for help. I think you picked the right species to ask, Jake said. Thane looked at him hopefully. Do you really believe that? Jake thought about every disaster movie he had ever seen. In all of them, aliens came to Earth to destroy or conquer. But real, first contact was not like the movies. It was a tired refugee asking for help in broken English while his people waited to die. Yeah, Jake said. I think we are better than you might expect, but you have to give us time to figure this out. We have never done this before. Neither have we, Thane admitted. Most species shoot first and ask questions later. You are the first to invite us inside and offer conversation. As they talked, messages flew between world capitals. President Carter was coordinating with other leaders, trying to build a response that would not start a war. Some nations wanted to attack immediately. Others wanted to negotiate. A few wanted to hide and hope the aliens would go away. But hiding was not an option. The whole world was watching. And up in space, 3 million refugees were running out of time. By the end of the day, one thing was clear. Humanity was about to face its biggest test, not a test of weapons or technology, but a test of character. Were they the kind of species that helped strangers in need or the kind that turned them away? The answer would change everything. The meeting room in Nevada was the strangest place on Earth. Half the people sitting around the long table were human. The other half were not. Sunlight came through the windows and made the silver skin of the Kethmori shine like metal. Dr. Elena Rodriguez shuffled through her papers and tried to stay calm. As Earth's lead negotiator, she had prepared for many difficult talks. Labor disputes, trade deals, peace treaties. But she had never negotiated with aliens before. Let me make sure I understand, she said to Ambassador Thane, who sat across from her. You are asking for permanent homes for 3 million people. That is correct, Thane replied. His translator device made his words sound flat, but Elena could hear the hope underneath. We do not ask for your cities or your best land. We can live in places humans do not want. Deserts, frozen areas, mountains. We are good at making difficult places livable. President Carter leaned forward. She had flown to Nevada personally because this was too important for phone calls. And what do you offer in return? Commander Zara spoke for the first time. Everything we have. Our technology, our knowledge, our friendship. Be specific, said Chancellor Klaus Weber from the European Union. He had been against the talks from the beginning. What exactly are we getting? Dr. Kira activated a holographic display that made several humans jump back in surprise. Images of machines and diagrams filled the air above the table. Clean energy that will never run out, Kira explained. Medical knowledge that can cure diseases you think are impossible to heal. Materials stronger and lighter than anything you have. Plants that can grow food in any soil, even in space. Elena stared at the floating images. This technology could change everything. Yes, Commander Zara said, but we offer something more valuable. We offer warning. Warning about what? The galaxy is not a safe place, Thane said quietly. The Galactic Federation pretends to keep peace, but they only help species that serve them. The sectar hegemony grows stronger every year. They will find Earth eventually. General Barnes, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Are you saying we are in danger? All young civilizations are in danger, Zara replied. We can teach you to protect yourselves. We can help you build defenses. We can share our weapons, technology. Or, Klaus said coldly, you could be lying. You could be invasion scouts preparing our world for conquest. The room went quiet. Elena watched the Kethmori faces carefully. She saw hurt there and anger, but also understanding. You are right to be suspicious, Thane said finally. If strangers came to our world with the same story, we would ask the same questions. All we can do is prove ourselves with time. Time we do not have, Commander Zara added. Our people are dying. Every day we wait, more children get sick. More families lose hope. Elena looked at the medical reports the Kethmori had shared. The numbers were terrible. Malnutrition, oxygen poisoning, depression, something they called void sickness that happened when people lived in space too long. If we agree to help, Elena said, where would you want to live? Dr. Kira brought up new images, maps of Earth with green areas marked on them. Here, in your Australian desert. Here, in northern Canada. Here in the Sahara. Places that are empty or hard for humans to use. We can turn them into gardens. Prime Minister Kevin Hughes from Canada studied the map. These areas are empty because they are difficult to live in. Difficult for humans, Zara said with what might have been a smile. The Kethmori evolved on a world with thin air and little water. What you call wasteland, we call home. How do we know you will stay in those areas? Klaus demanded. How? Do we know you will not spread into our cities and take our jobs? Because we will write it into law, Elena said, surprising everyone. A formal treaty, the first treaty between Earth and another species. She had been thinking about this for days. If they were going to do this, they had to do it right. Rules both sides agreed to follow. Rights and responsibilities. Protections for everyone. The Terran Accords, she continued. A document that spells out exactly what both sides can and cannot do. President Carter nodded slowly. Settlement zones for the Kethmori. Technology sharing agreements. Mutual defense pacts. Defense against what? Asked President Viktor Petrov from Russia, who had joined by video link. Against anyone who tries to hurt either of our species, Zara said. We stand together, or we fall apart. The talks continued for 3 days. Elena found herself working, late into the night with Thane, trying to solve problems nobody had ever faced before. How do you integrate 3 million aliens into human society? How do you prevent conflicts? How do you make sure both species benefit? The hardest part was not the negotiations, it was the protests outside. Richard Stone had been on television every night for a week, calling the Kethmori a threat to humanity. His Earth First movement had grown from a few hundred people to thousands. They marched outside the meeting building, carrying signs that said Earth for humans and don't trust the invaders. On the third night, some of the protesters turned violent. Marcus Webb, one of Stone's followers, led a group that attacked a Kethmori shuttle that was bringing supplies to the talks. They threw rocks and bottles and screamed about alien monsters stealing human jobs. Elena watched the news footage with sick horror. The Kethmori in the shuttle were medical staff bringing medicine for their sick children. They had not fought back even when the windows broke and cut them. I am sorry, she told Thane the next morning. Those people do not speak for all of us. We know, Thane replied, but his large eyes were sad. Every species has those who fear change. We just hoped yours might be different. Most of us are different, Elena insisted. The protesters are loud, but they are not the majority. She was right. Polls showed that 60% of humans supported helping the refugees. Churches and charities were collecting supplies. Scientists were excited about the new technology. Children were drawing pictures of their new alien neighbors and sending them to the Kethmori ships. The breakthrough came when young Kethmori engineer Voss Neltar started working with human engineer Susan Blake. They were trying to solve a technical problem: how to connect Kethmori power systems to Earth's electrical grid. Elena found them in the workshop at 2 in the morning, surrounded by cables and broken equipment. "Any progress?" she asked. Susan looked up from a smoking circuit. "Bored. This is impossible. Their energy output is too high for our systems. Everything burns out." Voss held up a strange crystal device. "Maybe we approach it wrong. Instead of making our power fit your systems, we make adapters. Small machines that change the energy flow." "Like transformers," Susan said, suddenly understanding, "but way more advanced." Elena watched them work together, solving problems by sharing ideas. Voss would suggest something using Kethmori science, and Susan would find a way to build it using Earth materials. They were creating something new, something that belonged to both species. "You see?" Thane said, appearing beside Elena. "This is why we have hope. Your people and ours, we think alike. We solve problems the same way, together." On the 4th day, they had a breakthrough in the talks too. Dr. Elena Rodriguez and Ambassador Thane finished writing the Terran Accords, 47 pages of rules, rights, and promises. The Kethmori would get homes in the agreed areas. They would share their technology freely. They would help defend Earth if needed. In return, humans would provide land, resources, and protection. Both species would work together to build a better future. President Carter read through the document one final time. "If we sign this, there is no going back. We become a multi-species world." "We are already a multi-species world," Elena replied. "The question is whether we do it with laws and agreements or with chaos and fear." The signing ceremony was broadcast around the world. President Carter sat at a table with Commander Zara and Ambassador Thane. Behind them stood representatives from dozens of nations and Kethmori clans. "Today," President Carter said to the cameras, "humanity takes its first step into the larger galaxy. We do not do this out of naivety or blind trust. We do this because helping others in need is who we are at our best." She signed her name on the document. Then Commander Zara signed with a flowing script that looked like art. Then Thane, and then leaders from around the world. As the ceremony ended, Elena felt someone touch her arm. She turned to see Voss and Susan standing together, both smiling. "Dear, power adapters work," Susan said. "We can connect their ships to our electrical grid tonight. Their medical bay will have full power for the first time in months." "The children?" Elena asked. "Will start getting better immediately," Voss replied. "Thanks to human power and Kethmori medicine working together." Elena looked out the window at the crowd gathered outside. Most were cheering and celebrating. A few were still protesting, but they seemed smaller now. Less important, the Terran Accords were signed. The first alien refugees were coming to Earth, and despite all the fear and uncertainty, Elena believed they had made the right choice. After all, in a galaxy that had turned its back on the Kethmori, Earth had opened its arms. That said something important about who humans really were. Time would tell if it was enough. Tom Patterson had been farming in Kansas for 23 years. He knew everything about growing corn and wheat in the American heartland. But the Kethmori farm next to his land was growing things that should not be possible. Tom stood at his fence line, watching silver-skinned aliens tend plants that were twice as tall as his corn. The Kethmori crops grew in sandy soil that Tom knew was worthless. They used almost no water, and they produced 3 times more food per acre than his best fields. "This is not fair," he muttered to himself. His neighbor, Nera Silveth, appeared on the other side of the fence. She was young for a Kethmori, maybe 30 in human years. Her family had been assigned to this settlement area near the border between Kansas and Colorado. "Good morning, Tom," she said in careful English. Your crops look healthy today. Tom grunted. 2 years ago, he had been excited about alien neighbors. The technology sharing was supposed to help everyone. But watching Kethmori farms succeed, while human farmers struggled, was hard to accept. How do you do it? He asked finally. How do you grow so much food in such bad soil? Nera smiled. Would you like me to show you? An hour later, Tom was walking through the Kethmori farm with his mouth open. The plants were not just bigger. They were completely different. Fruits and vegetables he had never seen before. Grain that grew in spirals instead of straight lines. Root systems that seemed to talk to each other underground. These seeds come from our homeworld, Nera explained. But we changed them using your earth science. Now they can grow in your soil and your climate. Change them how? Genetic modification, but much more advanced than what humans can do. We can make plants that eat pollution and turn it into nutrients. Plants that grow faster in cold weather. Plants that taste like meat but are still vegetables. Tom touched one of the strange fruits. It was warm to the touch and smelled like fresh bread. Could you teach human farmers to do this? Of course, Nera said, surprised. That is part of the Terran Accords. We share all our knowledge. Did nobody tell you? Tom realized that nobody had told him. The government had said technology would be shared, but they had not explained how or when. For 2 years, he had watched his alien neighbors get richer while he struggled to pay his bills. I am sorry, Nera continued. We thought human farmers did not want our help. You all seemed unfriendly. Tom felt ashamed. He had been unfriendly, but only because he was scared and jealous. Maybe we could work together, he suggested. Meanwhile, in northern Canada, other problems were brewing. The Kethmori settlement of New Kethtar had been built in the frozen wilderness, far from human cities, but the aliens had turned the ice and snow into something beautiful. Their buildings looked like crystal castles that glowed with warm light. They had created gardens under dome shields where tropical plants grew in the Arctic cold. The settlement was so advanced that human reporters called it a miracle of engineering, but the Kethmori living there were not happy. Elder Jorik Talsin, now serving as the settlement's leader, stood in the community center addressing a crowd of frustrated families. We followed the rules, said a Kethmori woman named Vera Kolesh. We stayed in the areas humans gave us. We did not interfere with their cities. But our children are lonely. They have no human friends. They do not understand Earth culture. And human children do not understand us, added another parent. When our young ones go to the human school in Yellowknife, the other students are afraid of them. Jorik nodded sadly. The integration was not working as well as the diplomats had hoped. Both species were following the letter of the law, but they were not really becoming friends. Perhaps, Jorik said carefully, we have been too careful about staying separate. Perhaps it is time to build bridges. The real test came without warning on a Tuesday morning in March. Captain Michelle Torres was on duty at the Cheyenne Mountain Space Command when the alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed across every screen in the room. The massive displays showed dozens of ships appearing at the edge of the solar system. What am I looking at? Demanded General Barnes, who had rushed to the command center. Unknown vessels, reported Lieutenant Danny Chen from his station. They just dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter. Configuration matches Sectar hegemony warships. Michelle felt her blood turn cold. The Sectar were the species that had driven the Kethmori from their homes. If they had followed the refugees to Earth, are they heading our way? Negative. They are holding position and broadcasting a message. The main screen filled with the image of a creature that looked like it was made from black metal and hate. Its red eyes glowed as it spoke in a voice like grinding gears. People of Earth, the Sectar commander said, we are here for the criminals you harbor. Surrender the Kethmori refugees, and we will leave your world in peace. Refuse, and we will take them by force. General Barnes was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then he activated the emergency communication system. All units, this is DEFCON 1. We are under immediate threat of invasion. This is not a drill. Around the world, military forces prepared for humanity's first interstellar war. But they were not alone. Commander Zara received the alert while inspecting the new Kethmori settlement in Australia. Within minutes, she was aboard a shuttle racing toward the human military base at Alice Springs. "We will fight," she told General Barnes when they connected by video link. "This is our fault. We brought this danger to your world." "No," Barnes replied firmly. "This is exactly what the Terran Accords were for. We stand together." The combined human Kethmori fleet that launched to meet the Sectar raiders was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human spacecraft equipped with Kethmori weapons and shields, alien ships crewed by mixed human and Kethmori teams, two species working as one. Captain Torres commanded the lead ship, a new vessel called the Freedom that had been built using technology from both worlds. At her side sat Kale Doran, a young Kethmori warrior who served as her tactical advisor. 37. Enemy ships, Kyle reported as they approached the battle zone. "Heavy cruisers and destroyers. They outgun us 2-1. Numbers do not tell the whole story," Torres replied. "They expect us to fight like separate fleets. They do not know. We learned to work together." The battle that followed lasted 6 hours and changed everything. The Sectar attacked with overwhelming force, expecting easy victory. But the human Kethmori fleet fought like nothing they had seen before. Human pilots used tactics the aliens did not understand. Kethmori warriors protected human ships with their lives. When Captain Torres's ship was damaged and spinning out of control, it was Kale Doran who crawled through burning corridors to restart the engines. When Lieutenant Danny Chen's fighter was surrounded by 3 enemy ships, Kethmori pilot Nira, Velthak flew her damaged cruiser directly into the enemy formation, sacrificing herself to save him. The turning point came when the combined fleet used a strategy no single species could have developed. Human ships, small and fast, drew the enemy into a trap. Kethmori vessels, heavily armed and shielded, appeared from hyperspace behind the Sectar fleet. Caught between two forces, the raiders found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered. The surviving Sectar ships retreated, but not before their commander sent one final message. "This is not over, humans. The galaxy will learn what you have done here. You have chosen to stand with criminals and refugees. There will be consequences." After the battle, Captain Torres and Kale Doran sat in the medical bay, both wounded, but alive. Danny Chen was there too, his arm in a sling, but his spirit unbroken. "We won," Danny said, still amazed. "We survived," Torres corrected. "The real war is just beginning." But something had changed. On Earth, humans who had been suspicious of their alien neighbors watched the battle footage and saw Kethmori warriors dying to protect human worlds. Kethmori families who had felt isolated saw human soldiers fighting desperately to defend alien refugees. Tom Patterson called Naira Silveth the day after the battle. "About that farming technology," he said, "I think it is time we started working together." In New Kethtar, Elder Jorik announced that the settlement would be opening its doors to human visitors. Cultural exchange programs, joint schools, mixed communities where both species could learn from each other. The victory celebration was held in cities around the world. Humans and Kethmori danced together in the streets. Children from both species played games together. For the first time since first contact, it felt like they were truly becoming one people. But in the depths of space, other eyes were watching. The Galactic Federation had noticed what happened at Earth. They had seen a primitive world defeat a Sectar raid fleet. They had seen two species unite in ways the galaxy thought impossible. Some Federation leaders were impressed. Others were afraid. And a few were already planning to ensure that this dangerous example of cooperation would not spread to other worlds. The real test was still coming. President Lisa Carter stood in the White House Situation Room, looking at the most terrifying sight in human history. The holographic display showed 300 Federation warships surrounding Earth like a metal cage. They had arrived without warning, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. "Madam President," came the cold voice of Federation Admiral Krix Volan through the speakers, "you have 48 hours to surrender the Kethmori criminals to us. If you refuse, we will take them by force and add your world to our list of restricted civilizations." "What does that mean exactly?" Carter asked. It means we will destroy your space capability and monitor your planet to prevent future violations of galactic law. No more space travel for humanity. No more contact with other species. You will remain on your world until you prove you can be trusted. Carter looked around the room at her advisors. General Barnes looked grim. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was pale with fear. Commander Zara, attending by video link from the Kethmori settlement, had her head in her hands. We need those 48 hours to evacuate, Zara said quietly. My people can leave Earth and surrender to the Federation. There is no reason for humans to suffer for our mistakes. No, Carter said firmly. Absolutely not. We signed the Terran Accords. We gave our word. Your world will be destroyed, Zara protested. Then we die together, Carter replied. That is what allies do. But surrender was not President Carter's plan. For 2 years, human and Kethmori scientists had been working on something the galaxy had never seen before. Dr. Amanda Price called it Project Unity, and it was either going to save both species or get them all killed. Deep underground, in a hidden laboratory in Colorado, Dr. Price stood beside Dr. Kira Mordan, looking at their greatest creation. The quantum defense network looked like a sphere of pure light surrounded by impossible mathematics. Will it work? Amanda asked. In theory, Kira replied. Human creativity combined with Kethmori engineering. We are about to find out if 2 + 2 = 5. The defense network was built on a simple idea that had revolutionary implications. Most species in the galaxy thought defensively. Shields to block attacks, armor to absorb damage. But humans and Kethmori working together had developed something different. Instead of stopping enemy weapons, they would redirect them. Quantum reflection fields, Amanda explained to the military commanders who had gathered to watch the test. Enemy energy weapons hit our field and bounce back at the ships that fired them. The more they shoot at us, the more damage they do to themselves. Admiral Henry Foster, the new commander of Earth's combined defense forces, studied the readings. How many ships can this system handle? We do not know, admitted Kira. We have never tested it against a real fleet. Well, Foster said grimly, we are about to get the ultimate field test. As the 48-hour deadline approached, both human and Kethmori families prepared for war. In New Kethtar, children who had been born on Earth helped their parents pack emergency supplies. These young ones spoke both languages fluently and thought of themselves as citizens of both worlds. 10-year-old Sam Patterson, Tom's son, worked alongside his best friend Zix Silveth, Nera's daughter. They had grown up together on the border, between the human and Kethmori farms. Are we going to die? Sam asked as they helped load medical supplies. Zix thought about it seriously. The way Kethmori children were taught to consider difficult questions. Maybe. But if we do, at least we will die as friends. I do not want to die, Sam said. Then we have to win, Zix replied simply. Around the world, the same scene was repeated millions of times. Humans and Kethmori who had spent 2 years learning to live together now prepared to fight together or die together. When the Federation deadline expired, Admiral Crix Volan did not bother with more threats. His ships opened fire immediately, sending enough energy to glass the surface of a planet. But something impossible happened. The quantum defense network activated, creating a shimmering barrier around Earth and its moon. The Federation weapons struck the barrier and rebounded, slamming back into the ships that had fired them. Explosions lit up space as the Federation fleet found themselves under attack by their own weapons. What is this? Crix demanded, his ship rocking under the impact of its own guns. On Earth, Admiral Foster watched the impossible sight of an enemy fleet destroying itself. Target their command ship. All weapons full power. The combined human Kethmori fleet launched from hidden bases around the solar system. These were not the same ships that had fought the Sectar raiders 2 years ago. They had been rebuilt, using the best technology both species could offer. Captain Michelle Torres, now commanding the flagship Unity, led the attack. Beside her, Kyle Dor-An coordinated the Kethmori squadrons. Behind them, Lieutenant Danny Chen commanded a wing of fighters crewed by pilots from both worlds. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The Federation had expected to crush a primitive world and its alien, refugees. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that used tactics they had never seen. Human ships, small and fast, swarmed through the Federation formation like angry wasps. Kethmori vessels, heavy and powerful, anchored defensive positions and provided covering fire. But the real key was how they worked together. When Torres needed cover, Kale's ships were there. When Danny's fighters ran low on fuel, Kethmori carriers were waiting. When Federation ships tried to break through their lines, both species responded as one. They fight like a single organism, Admiral Crix reported to his superiors as his fleet continued to take losses. How is this possible? The answer was simple but revolutionary. Most galactic species fought alone, even when they were allies. They had separate command structures, different tactics, competing goals. But humans and Kethmori had spent 2 years becoming one people. Their children played together. Their scientists worked together. Their soldiers trusted each other completely. The turning point came when the Federation tried to bypass the quantum defense network by landing troops directly on Earth's surface. Transport ships broke through the orbital battle and headed for major cities. But they were met by something the galaxy had never seen: an integrated planetary defense system run by both species working as partners. Human air forces used Kethmori targeting systems to shoot down invasion craft with impossible accuracy. Kethmori ground troops, backed by human artillery, drove the survivors back to their landing sites. In city after city, mixed units of both species fought side by side to protect their shared home. In New York, police officer Janet Murphy fought alongside Kethmori warrior Thal Kolesh to evacuate civilians from a battle zone. In London, human medic Peter Lewis and Kethmori Dr. Vera Mordan worked together to save the wounded from both sides. But the most important battle was not fought with weapons. Dr. Amanda Price and Dr. Kira Mordan had been monitoring the quantum defense network when they made an incredible discovery. The system was not just reflecting weapons, it was learning. Each attack made it stronger and more efficient. "Kira, look at this," Amanda said, staring at readings that should have been impossible. "The network is evolving. It is becoming something we never designed." "It is becoming alive," Kira whispered. "The combination of human neural patterns and Kethmori quantum processing. We have created artificial intelligence." The new AI, born from the partnership of 2 species, reached out across space and touched the Federation fleet. It did not attack their ships or harm their crews. Instead, it did something far more dangerous. It told them the truth. Every Federation ship received the same message, broadcast directly into their computer systems: the real history of the Kethmori refugees, the sectar atrocities they had tried to prevent, the Federation politicians who had covered up genocide to maintain their alliance with the hegemony. Federation crews who had been told they were fighting. Dangerous criminals learned they were actually attacking people who had risked everything to save innocent lives. Mutinies broke out across the fleet as soldiers refused to fire on refugees and their human protectors. Admiral Crix found himself commanding a fleet that would no longer obey orders. Within hours, half his ships had surrendered or withdrawn from the battle. The war ended not with violence but with understanding. 3 months later, President Carter stood before the newly formed Interstellar Commonwealth, addressing representatives from dozens of worlds. The old Galactic Federation had collapsed when the truth about their corruption became public knowledge. "Today we establish something new," Carter said to the mixed audience of humans, Kethmori and species from across the galaxy. "Not a federation, built on fear and control, but a commonwealth built on cooperation and mutual respect. The Commonwealth Charter was based on the Terran Accords, the simple agreement between humans and Kethmori refugees that had grown into a model for interstellar civilization." 5 years later, Danny Chen stood at the altar in a ceremony that symbolized how much the galaxy had changed. He was marrying Leora Felshan, a Kethmori artist who had been born on Earth. The wedding was attended by humans and aliens from dozens of worlds. President Carter, now serving as Earth's representative to the Commonwealth Council, watched the ceremony with tears in her eyes.